Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana-salakaya Chakshulmritam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So today we'll be starting a new chapter. Chapter number 3 of Antya Leela, titled The Glories of Srila Haridas Thakur. The beginning of this chapter, we'll be discussing about the pastimes of Mahaprabhu and one of his close associates, Dhammadar, Pandit, and then the rest of the chapter will talk about Haridas Thakur. So today, most likely we'll only be able to cover the pastimes of Dhammadar Pandit. I think from tomorrow onwards we'll see the pastimes of Haridas Thakur. So, start with text 1, Antya Leela, chapter 3. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master and of all of the other preceptors on the path of devotional service, unto all the Vaishnavas and unto the 6 Goswamis, including Srila Rupa Goswami, Srila Sanatana Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, Jiva Goswami and their associates. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Sri Advaita Acharya Prabhu, Sri Nityananda Prabhu and Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, as well as all of his devotees headed by Srivas Thakur. I then offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of Lord Krishna and Srimati Radharani and all the gopis headed by Lalita and Visakha. All glories to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all glories to Nityananda Prabhu, all glories to Advaita Acharya, and all glories to all the devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In Jagannath Puri, there was a young boy who had been born of an Orisan Brahmana, but had later lost his father. The boy's features were very beautiful, and his behavior was extremely gentle. The boy came daily to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and offered him respectful obeisances. He was free to talk with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because the Lord was his life and soul. But the boy's intimacy with the Lord and the Lord's mercy towards him were intolerable for Dhammadar Pandit. So in one purport in Adi Leela, Prabhupada explains that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he taught his principles through 4 of his very extraordinary or very exalted devotees. And these 4 special devotees through whom Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally taught the rest of the world different principles are: number 1, Ramananda Roy; number 2, Damodar Pandit, which we're going to hear about his pastimes in this chapter today. Number 3 is Haridas Thakur, and number 4 is Sanatana Goswami. So Prabhupada in one purport in Adi Leela, he explains that through these 4 devotees, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will teach through them different principles for Vaishnavas to learn. So through Ramananda Roy, Prabhupada explains, through Ramananda Roy, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he taught how a Vaishnava can overcome the power of Cupid, or how a Vaishnava can overcome the strong lusty desires or the arrows of Cupid. And how did Ramananda Roy display this? Prabhupada explains. We'll see this pastime of Ramananda Roy, I think later on in this Antya Leela. So Ramananda Roy, it's explained that him and Swarup Damodar Goswami, they were 2 of the closest associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Ramananda Roy, one of his services was that he used to train a certain set of young girls to dance for the pleasure of Lord Jagannath. So in the Jagannath temple, there were a certain group of young girls whose whole life was dedicated to simply dance for the pleasure of Jagannath. And Ramananda Roy's service was that he was in charge of training these young girls in how to dance nicely for the pleasure of Jagannath. Not only would he used to train these young girls in dancing, but Caitanya Caritamrta explains that he used to also personally bathe these young girls, and he used to personally dress them and decorate them also. So when someone hears this, it's astonishing. How can, one of Mahaprabhu's closest associates do something like this? Personally bathe young girls, dress them, decorate them. But Mahaprabhu, he makes this point that although Ramananda Roy is doing all this, he is not even slightly agitated by lust. His mind is not even slightly agitated. He is just completely, fully focused on Lord Jagannath. And Mahaprabhu wants that such a display of devotional service is only possible for Ramananda Roy and no one else. No one else in this whole world can imitate such an act which Ramananda Roy is doing. So Prabhupada explains, ordinarily, just by the sight of a beautiful young girl, one's mind gets agitated. But here we're seeing Ramananda Roy, he is personally training young girls in dancing for Lord Jagannath. Not only that, he is personally bathing them, dressing them and decorating them. So Ramananda Roy, he is no ordinary personality. He is actually Arjuna from Bhagavad Gita and also Visakha Shaki from Krishna Lila combined together. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's other closest associate, Swarup Damodar, who was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's personal secretary, he is Lalita Sakhi. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he is Krishna in the mood of Srimati Radharani. So that's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's two closest associates was Swarup Damodar on one side, who is Lalita Sakhi, and Ramananda Roy on the other side, who is Visakha Sakhi also, and also Arjuna combined together. So through Ramananda Roy, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Prabhupada explains, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught how a Vaishnava, by the power of bhakti, by the power of the holy name, by the power of devotional service, he can completely overcome the influence of Cupid, he can completely overcome the power of lust. One time, one of Prabhupada's disciples, he comes to Prabhupada and he sincerely puts forward problem to Prabhupada, that Prabhupada, I'm getting too much affected by lusty desires, what can I do? And Prabhupada simply said, if you're getting overcome by lust, you just chant Hare Krishna more. You just chant extra rounds, chant Hare Krishna more sincerely, and don't worry, lust will go away. So this is the solution, or this principle of the power of bhakti in overcoming lust, in overcoming the influence of Cupid, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught through the example of Ramananda Roy. Of course, the example is very high, which Mahaprabhu himself wants that this can't be imitated by no other personality in this world. But through this we see the power of bhakti. Secondly, through Damodar Pandit, so this we shouldn't confuse with Swarup Damodar. So Swarup Damodar was Mahaprabhu's personal secretary, and he was Lalita Sakhi in Krishna Lila. But there is another devotee of Mahaprabhu, whose name was Damodar Pandit or Damodar Das. And this Damodar Pandit we're going to hear about today. And he is also no ordinary personality. He's another intimate associate of Krishna in Krishna Lila. He's Sebya Gopi, so a Gopi named Sebya in Krishna Lila. So he's also another Gopi in Krishna Lila. So through Damodar Pandit, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught, Prabhupada explains, the principle of neutrality, or the principle of how neutrality in the sense that Damodar Pandit, he wouldn't, if he would see something wrong, he would just point it out immediately. He wouldn't think twice. Like if someone is very close to us or very near loved ones, we have some bias against them. And we generally wouldn't, for our close friends or some intimate family members, so on and so forth, we wouldn't just openly point out their faults and mistakes because we're afraid it might harm the relationship. But Damodar Pandit, he wasn't like that. He was neutral, which means he wouldn't see someone as his friend or enemy. He would just see everyone equally. And if he would see someone doing something wrong, even though that someone might be someone very great, or even though that someone might be his very dear and loved one, still he wouldn't hesitate. He would point out, okay, this is a mistake you're doing. You shouldn't do like this. So through him, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu displayed the principle of neutrality. How one should be neutral, not have any bias. And Damodar Pandit, he was especially known for this. All the Vaishnavas, they used to be, when Damodar Pandit was in the room, everyone would behave themselves because he was very strict. If you would notice anyone deviating even slightly from the Vaishnava principles, immediately he would chastise him, immediately he would correct them. That, Prabhuji or Maji, you're not doing this right, you should do like this. So much so, we'll see in today's verses, that he even corrects Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. Even though Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Supreme Personality Godhead, still when he's seeing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu doing something a bit outside, he's even correcting him. So through Dhammadar Pandit, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught the principle of neutrality. How one should see everyone equally, and if there is any fault, one should immediately point out. But also there is a danger with this, which Prabhupada will talk about in one of the purports of today. We'll discuss this later. So that's the second devotee. First devotee is Ramananda Roy. Second devotee is Damodar Pandit. Third devotee is Srila Haridas Thakur, whose glories we'll see in the next section of this chapter. So this chapter is titled Glories of Haridas Thakur. But before the actual Glories of Haridas Thakur starts, first we're going to see the pastimes of Damodar Pandit with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Haridas Thakur is another devotee through whom Mahaprabhu taught Vaishnava principles, and especially it's given by Srila Prabhupada. Through Haridas Thakur, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught forbearance or tolerance. So all the devotees, they have all the, they have a unlimited list of wonderful qualities. But for the sake of analysis, Prabhupada, he highlights one particular quality which a particular devotee of the Lord is demonstrating. So for Haridas Thakur, Srila Prabhupada explains, through him Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught the principle of tolerance or forbearance. How did Haridas Thakur show this? The famous pastime where Haridas Thakur was beaten in 22 marketplaces. So we all know that pastime. The Muslim governor, he ordered for Haridas Thakur to be beaten in one marketplace after another, in open public, until he passed away or until he died. So they took the Muslim soldiers or the police officers, they were taking Haridas Thakur to one marketplace after another, beating him ruthlessly again and again and again. But no matter how much they beat Haridas Thakur, he just wasn't dying. Then finally at the end, after beating him in 22 marketplaces, just like here in Sydney, we have different Westfields, different suburbs, we have different Westfields. So in those days, in that area, they had different, not a big Westfield shopping center, but marketplaces. So they took Haridas Thakur to 22 different marketplaces, but still Haridas Thakur wasn't passing away. Finally, they gave up and they just prayed to Haridas Thakur that you please die, because if you don't die, then our boss, he's going to come and kill us. So then Haridas Thakur, he faints and he becomes unconscious. Now the amazing thing is, all the while Haridas Thakur was being beaten by these Muslim soldiers, by the soldiers of the king, generally if we were put in that situation, we would also be praying. But what would our prayer be? Our prayer would be that, we'll be feeling the intense pain of being whipped again and again. So in that pain, we'll be praying to Krishna, oh Gopinath, please save me somehow. They're just beating me. If this goes on, I'll die. For all the service I've done, please, show some reciprocation. Please do some magic, make some miracle happen. Somehow rescue me from this. I'm just going to die here. Like this, we'll pray to Gopinath to please save us from the pain, save us from the suffering. But this wasn't Haridas Thakur's prayer. When he was beaten, he was also praying to Krishna, but his prayer was completely opposite. What was his mood? He was thinking, he was praying to Krishna, to Shri Radha Gopinath, that my dear Lord, all of these soldiers sent by the king, they're all innocent, they're all ignorant. Please forgive them. Don't punish them. Don't send them to hell. Out of ignorance, they're acting like this. They're just like ignorant children. They don't know what's right, they don't know what's wrong. So don't punish them, let them go. Don't forgive them, my Lord. Just like Jesus Christ was saying, forgive them, my Lord, they don't know what they're doing. So this was Haridas Thakur's consciousness. So as we all know from 9th canto, whenever any devotee is put in distress, then Sudarshan Chakra is immediately sent by Vishnu for the protection of the devotee. And we see that with Maharaj Ambrish. When he was in danger, immediately Vishnu sends Sudarshan Chakra for his rescue. So the same Sudarshan Chakra was again coming to save Haridas Thakur. But Sudarshan Chakra couldn't kill all of these soldiers. Why? Because out of the two, out of the Vaishnava and Krishna, who is greater? Krishna himself says in the Puranas that my devotee is greater than me. If one is only my devotee, one who worships me is not my devotee, but one who worships my devotees, he is actually my devotee. So in all the Shastras, Krishna declares that actually my devotee is greater than me. So Sudarshan Chakra, he understands this. Sudarshan Chakra, he has studied Bhagavatam, he has studied Caitanya Caritamrta, he has studied all the Shastras. He knows all the conclusion of the scriptures. So he knows that a Vaishnava is greater than Krishna himself. So on one hand, his Supreme Lord is saying, kill these demons who are, causing suffering to my devotee. But on the other hand, what is his devotee saying? Don't kill them, don't kill them. They're ignorant, they don't know what they're doing. Please have mercy on them. Out of ignorance, just like little children, they're acting like this. Please forgive them, my Lord, don't kill them. So Sudarshan Chakra is in dilemma. On one side, his master is saying, kill them. On the other side, there is his master's devotee, he's saying, don't kill them. So then he thinks, then he remembers the verses from Shastra, devotee is greater than Krishna, serving the devotee is higher. So then he goes with Haridas Thakur's words, and Sudarshan Chakra, he can't kill these soldiers who are beating Haridas Thakur. So then what can Vishnu do? His Sudarshan Chakra is not listening to him, and Haridas Thakur is personally being beaten. So then Vishnu himself, the Supreme Lord himself, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he himself comes and takes those beatings on his own back. And later on, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he reveals this to Haridas Thakur, that during the time when you were being beaten in 22 marketplaces, at that time I personally came behind you and I personally took all those beatings to protect you. And then Mahaprabhu showed all those scars on his back. So like this, through this amazing pastime of Haridas Thakur, Prabhupada explains, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed the Vaishnava quality of tolerance, of forbearance. Even when, Prabhupada will give the example of the tree, even when someone is cutting down the tree doesn't protest. Someone will come, try and cut down the tree, or someone will come past urine and stool at the foot of the tree never comes, the tree never swings its branch and hits that person on the head. No, the tree just tolerates. So this is the Vaishnava quality of forbearance or tolerance, which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu demonstrated through Haridas Thakur. Then lastly, we have Srila Sanatana Goswami. Through Sanatana Goswami, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught the principle of humility, how to be meek and humble. When Srila Sanatana Goswami came to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he offered full dandavats with straw in his mouth. As part of the tradition back then, 500 years ago, one would show humbleness or humility by having straw in the mouth and offering dandavats. So that was the traditional custom back then. So that's how Srila Sanatana Goswami, he approaches Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and the first words he speaks, introducing himself, was Nich Jati, Nich Sangi, Patita Adama, Kuvasai Kupapari, Gonainu Janama. So this is the way he is giving his resume to the Supreme Lord. So generally when we go out for a job interview, we go with our CV, our resume, and we talk about our glories that, I've worked here, I graduated from this, I have done this, I have done that, I have this work experience, I have this skill, I have good communication skills, good management skills. We start glorifying ourselves. But in Chaitanya Leela, we'll see devotees, they'll do the opposite. They'll put down themselves to qualify themselves to receive more mercy of the Lord. So how does Sanatana Goswami introduce himself? Although he was actually born in a very highly elevated Brahmana family, although he was such a great exalted scholar of the Shastras, although he was such a great pure devotee of the Lord, Srila Sanatana Goswami is none other than Rati Manjari in the spiritual world. So he's one of the Manjaris in the spiritual world. Still the way he introduces himself is Nich Jati, that my dear Lord, my Jati, my family in which I was born is actually very low. Although he was born in a Brahmana family, still he considered himself as low-born. Then Nich Sangi, my Sangi or my Sangha is also very low and degraded, because most of my lifetime I've been hanging out with the ministers of the Muslim king, hanging out with different politicians, and by the association with all of these politicians and materialistic ministers, I've become so degraded. So Nich Jati, Nich Sangi, Patita. Patita means very fallen. I am the most fallen. Adhama. Adhama means lowest of mankind. I am the most fallen and I am the lowest of mankind. And my whole lifetime I've simply wasted deep down in the dark bottom of the well of materialistic life. So this is how he introduces himself to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So like this, Srila Sanatana Goswami, he displays the Vaishnava quality of humility. Now coming back to Damodar Pandit. So now we're going to see this pastime of Damodar Pandit, how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will demonstrate the quality of neutrality through Damodar Pandit. So in this pastime what happens? That Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is in Jagannath Puri, and there was one very young boy who was very attracted to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and used to always come to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, being naturally attracted to him. And Mahaprabhu was also very affectionate to this young boy. Mahaprabhu will immediately take him on his lap, talk to him, speak some sweet words, so on and so forth. So it seems like something very innocent. There's a young boy, he likes Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu likes him. What's the harm in that? But Damodar Pandit, while watching all this, he starts becoming very agitated. And he starts becoming very angry, frustrated and furious. Why? Because actually this young boy is the son of a young Mataji who has become a widow. So a young Brahmana lady, she had this son through another Brahmana, but this Brahmana, due to some illness or disease, he untimely passed away. So now this young Brahmana lady, she's become a widow, but she's very young, and she's also said to be very beautiful. And she has this young son. So what Damodar Pandit is thinking is, if the young son of this young beautiful Brahmana lady goes every day and associates very intimately with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then the people in general, because of their bad consciousness, they will speak ill of my Supreme Lord. Because my Lord is also young sannyasi, he is also very young sannyasi, and this young widow lady, she is also very young, and she has this young son. So if people see that this young sannyasi is becoming so friendly with this young Mataji's young son, then they'll speak bad words. There will be rumors around Jagannath Puri, and ill words will be spoken in regards to the character of my Supreme Lord. So Damodar Pandit, he couldn't tolerate, naturally, as a pure devotee of Lord, he couldn't tolerate to hear any blasphemy or criticism of his dear Lord. So that was the reason why he was becoming angry at seeing this. Okay, so that's what we're going to read now. Okay, text number 3. In Jagannath Puri, there was a young boy who had been born of an Orisan Brahmana, but had later lost his father. The boy's features were very beautiful, and his behavior was extremely gentle. The boy came daily to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and offered him respectful obeisances. He was free to talk with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because the Lord was his life and soul. But the boy's intimacy with the Lord and the Lord's mercy toward him were intolerable for Damodar Pandit. Text 6. Damodar Pandit again and again forbade the son of the Brahmana to visit the Lord. But the boy could not bear staying home and not seeing Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Damodar Pandit couldn't bear to see this boy coming and associating very intimately with Supreme Lord. So Damodar Pandit, he himself went to this young boy and started chastising this boy. That, stop coming to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you shouldn't see him anymore. Stay at home, don't come. This is not good for you. Stay at home. So Damodar Pandit, he himself went to this young boy and started chastising this young boy, forbidding him to come to Mahaprabhu. But this young boy, being so attracted to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, didn't listen to Damodar Pandit, and still he kept coming to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Text 7. The boy came every day to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who treated him with great affection. It is the nature of any boy to go see a man who loves him. This was intolerable for Damodar Pandit. He became greatly unhappy, but there was nothing he could say, for the boy would ignore his restrictions. One day when the boy came to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Lord very affectionately inquired from him about all kinds of news. After some time, when the boy stood up and left, the intolerant Damodar Pandit began to speak. Damodar Pandit impudently said to the Lord, "Everyone says that you are a great teacher because of your instructions to others. But now we shall find out what kind of teacher you are." So, very sarcastically, Dhammadar Pandit is now, so all this while he was tolerating, burning inside, now he is openly chastising the Supreme Lord himself. What is he saying? That, everyone in Jagannath Puri is saying, you're a great sannyasi, you're a great teacher, you're a great scholar, but now we're going to see what kind of real teacher you are. So in this way he is indirectly chastising the Supreme Lord. I'll read the purport. This is an important purport. So in the purport, Prabhupada is saying, Damodar Pandit was a great devotee of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sometimes, however, a person in such a position becomes impudent, being influenced by the external energy and material considerations. Thus, a devotee mistakenly dares to criticize the activities of the spiritual master or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Despite the logic that Caesar's wife must be above suspicion, a devotee should not be disturbed by the activities of his spiritual master and should not try to criticize him. A devotee should be fixed in the conclusion that the spiritual master cannot be subject to criticism and should never be considered equal to a common man. If there appears to be some discrepancy according to an imperfect devotee's estimation, the devotee should be fixed in the conviction that even if the spiritual master goes to a liquor shop, he is not a drunkard. Rather, he must have some purpose in going there. It is said in the Bengali poem, even if I see that Lord Nityananda has entered a liquor shop, I shall not be diverted from my conclusion that Nityananda Raya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there are two angles Prabhupada is explaining how we can see this Leela. One angle is Damodar Pandit, out of his deep love and concern for the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord is his worshipable deity, and he doesn't want the Lord to be criticized or looked down upon by people in general. So that's why, in that mood, he is criticizing the Supreme Lord. Because people will speak ill, there'll be rumors. The other angle is, Prabhupada is explaining, that we shouldn't, Prabhupada is warning us that in general, as devotees, we should never find fault with our spiritual masters. And Prabhupada is saying that this is actually a great offense if we find some fault with our spiritual authorities, with our spiritual master. And Prabhupada is saying that sometimes it might seem that our spiritual master or authorities are doing something questionable, but we should understand that even if our spiritual master is doing something which might seem to be a bit out of the ordinary, we should understand or be fixed in the conviction that there is a proper reason why they're doing it. And Prabhupada has given an example, even if one liquor shop. So Prabhupada is saying, even if there appears to be some discrepancy according to an imperfect devotee's estimation, the devotee should be fixed in the conviction that even if his spiritual master goes to a liquor shop, he is not a drunkard. Rather, he must have some purpose in going there. So Prabhupada is giving an example. Even if one sees one's spiritual master entering into a liquor shop, one shouldn't immediately start finding fault and coming to a conclusion, my Guru Maharaj, he's becoming a drunkard, or why is he doing this? One shouldn't start finding fault and criticizing. That will be a great offense. One should have that conviction, even if my spiritual master is going to a liquor shop, there is some proper reason why he's going there. He's probably going in there to preach to the owner of that liquor shop to make him into a Vaishnava, or he's going in there to distribute books to that owner of the liquor shop. And Prabhupada is quoting one Bengali poem in which a devotee is saying, even if I see Lord Nityananda enter into a drunkard's place or enter into a liquor shop, still he is my worshipful Lord. Why? Because a devotee understands. If the Supreme Lord or his devotees go to sinful places or questionable places like this, the only reason they would go is for preaching. Why else would they go? Out of compassion for these fallen conditioned souls who are engaged in these illicit activities, they're probably going there to preach and make them into devotees. So Prabhupada is saying that we should have this conviction, and to find fault with our spiritual masters is actually can lead to fall down, can lead to us going back in our spiritual life. And one classical example of this we can see with, later on in this Antya Leela, there will be a story of Ramachandra Puri. So Madhavendra Puri, he was the spiritual master of Ishwar Puri. And Ishwar Puri was the spiritual master of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's spiritual master is Ishwar Puri, and Ishwar Puri's spiritual master is Madhavendra Puri. So Madhavendra Puri, he was a great, pure, unalloyed devotee of the Lord. And in CC, it's given, he had many disciples, but there was two contrasting disciples. One was Ishwar Puri on one side. On the other side, there was another disciple of his called Ramachandra Puri. And Prabhupada explains that Ishwar Puri, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's spiritual master, was an ideal example of an ideal disciple of the Guru. Whereas Ramachandra Puri, on the other side, was the ideal example of a bad disciple of the spiritual master, or a not so good disciple of the spiritual master. And what was his fault? He fell prey to this anartha of finding fault with his Guru. So when Madhavendra Puri, he was leaving this world, he was lying on his bed, and in separation from the Supreme Lord, he was crying out to the Supreme Lord, offering different prayers. And Ramachandra Puri, he was present along with Ishwar Puri, but Ramachandra Puri, he was finding fault with his own spiritual master. And he himself started criticizing his own Guru, saying that, at this time, why are you crying? Why are you in distress? You should meditate on the Brahman. You should be happy. Brahmananda, that is the topmost goal, is to merge into Brahman. You should be in Brahmananda. Why are you lamenting like this, like a sentimentalist? This is not good. Like this, he started chastising his own spiritual master. And why was his spiritual master crying? He was crying tears of ecstasy, the highest symptoms of love of Godhead he was displaying out of separation from Supreme Lord. But Ramachandra Puri, he couldn't understand all this, and he started chastising his own spiritual master, saying, what is all these tears? What is all this crying? You should fix your mind on Brahman, on the Brahma Jyoti. You should be Brahmananda, you should be happy. Like this, he started criticizing. Then Caitanya Caritamrta explains, because of this offense against his Guru, because of him chastising his own spiritual master, criticizing his own Guru, he then fell down. How did he fall down? By that offense, material desires started overtaking Ramachandra Puri as a reaction to that offense. And then he became so sinful, he became such an envious personality that he would always find fault with all Vaishnavas. And one particular way he used to do this, or tactic he used to do this to find fault, criticize and put down other Vaishnavas, is what he used to do, he would invite devotees to take prasad. So he would say, Prabhuji, Mataji, not Mataji, okay, Prabhuji, you please come, because he was a sannyasi. So this Ramachandra Puri, he was also a sannyasi, just like Ishwar Puri. So we'll invite different Vaishnavas for a big feast. So we'll say, Prabhus, please come to my place. We're going to serve nice feast today. You please come at this time. There will be nice prasad. So he'll very nicely request all the Vaishnavas to come take prasad at his place. Then everyone will come. Then he will very nicely seat everyone in rows. Then he will give them nice banana leaf plate. And then he'll start serving them prasad. And he will serve them. And then the devotees say, Prabhu, this is enough. This will fill my stomach. No need for more. But he would forcibly serve devotees more and more prasad. He would forcibly serve them extra rice, forcibly serve them extra sabji, forcibly serve them sweets, and like this he would forcibly serve all the Vaishnavas more prasad than they could handle. And he would force all the Vaishnavas to overeat the rice, overeat the sabjis, and overeat the sweets. Then after he himself forcibly making all the devotees overeat, then at the end he would criticize all the Vaishnavas behind the back and tell everyone else, just look at these Vaishnavas. Just look at these devotees of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Just look at these Vaishnavas coming from Bengal. They're externally dressed as renounced people. They're externally dressed as sannyasis. But just look how much they're eating. They're eating so much. Look how many sweets they're taking. So first he himself would force them to eat more. Then after they would eat more, he himself would go behind the back and start criticizing them. That just look at all these associates of Mahaprabhu, they have no sense control, they're overeating, what kind of sannyasis are this? So this was the nature of this Ramachandra Puri. Although he was a disciple of such a great personality, Madhavendra Puri, he became so degraded, he became such an envious, fault-finding personality. Like this, he used to criticize all the Vaishnavas. So all of this sprouted because of his offense to his spiritual master. So this is what Prabhupada is warning us against. That just like Dhammadar Pandit, he is criticizing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we shouldn't imitate this. Dhammadar Pandit can do this. He is on a different platform. He is a gopi in Krishna Leela. So he, out of his love for the Supreme Lord, can do this, but we shouldn't imitate Dhammadar Pandit. If we try and imitate and criticize our own spiritual masters, we'll commit big offense like Ramachandra Puri, and we'll also fall down, just like Ramachandra Puri. So in this way, in later on CC, we'll see this example. On one side we have Ishwara Puri, such a great exalted devotee of the Lord. On the other side we have Ramachandra Puri, such a crazy, envious, fault-finding personalities. Both of them are disciples of the same Guru, but they're acting complete opposite ways. So from this we can see that although it's said, sadhu sangha, sarva sastra koi, lava matra sadhu sangha, sarva siddhi hoy. Although we hear that the sangha of the sadhus is so powerful, just by a moment's association with a sadhu, you can get all perfection. Okay, we all hear this. But there is a little fine print. Yes, by a moment's association we can get all perfection, but that's provided we properly deal or associate with that sadhu. If we misbehave with that sadhu, then instead of getting his blessings, instead of getting empowered by him, we'll do aprad. And instead of going forward, we'll go backwards. Just like we see with Ramachandra Puri. Just like Ghanshyam Prabhu, he was giving the example of Gokarna, if you remember last week or the week before, in regards to hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. So Gokarna, just briefly going to that story, so as the name indicates, Gokarna, he was a great devotee of the Lord, and he was the Prabhuji who had cow ears. So Go means cow, Karna means ears. So Gokarna, he was a great devotee of the Lord who had ears of a cow. So there's a story how he got that. But he was a pure devotee of the Lord, and he had a brother, Dundukari, if I'm not mistaken. And his brother was complete opposite. His brother was a complete atheist, very sinful. Whole life he just committed sin after sin. Then his brother dies, his brother becomes a ghost. Then after becoming a ghost and suffering, he comes back to his brother, Gokarna, and asks him that, please, I committed so many sins, now become a ghost, I'm suffering. Can you find some solution for this? And Gokarna says, okay, no problem, I'll help you. Gokarna, he gets a bamboo stick, puts it into the ground, and asks his brother, who is a ghost, to come reside in that bamboo stick. And then what does Gokarna do? He starts reciting Srimad Bhagavatam for 7 days. And as Gokarna is reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, all the residents of that village, they find out that Bhagavatam is being spoken by a great devotee, Gokarna. So all the villagers also come and attend the Bhagavatam class given by Gokarna. So there is his brother, who is a ghost, hearing Bhagavatam, and there is all those villagers also who is hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. At the end of the 7 days, his brother, he gets liberated from the body of a ghost and he goes back to Vaikuntha. But all the villagers, they're still there, they're not liberated. So when all the villagers, they see that his brother goes back to Godhead, but they don't, they ask the question, how is it that he went back to Godhead and not us? And then Gokarna tells them that there is a difference in your hearing and my brother's hearing. As I was speaking Bhagavatam, my brother was hearing with full intensity, as if his life depended on it. And because of his sincere intensity in hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, he got the full benefit and he went back home, back to Godhead. And your level of hearing wasn't so high, so therefore you're not getting the full benefit. So just like with Bhagavatam, based on our intensity of hearing, we get different results. Same way with sadhus. Yes, it's said, if we associate with sadhus, we can get all perfection immediately in a moment's notice, in a moment of time. But that's provided we associate with the sadhu in a proper, humble way. If we properly associate with sadhus, then okay, we'll get the blessings, all perfection we can get. But if we misbehave with them, then there'll be aprad, and then we'll go backwards in our spiritual life. So we have to be careful in our dealings with sadhus. So this we see with the case of Ramachandra Puri. He was an example of someone who misbehaved with a Vaishnava, misbehaved with a sadhu. And Ishwara Puri on the other side, he properly behaved with a Vaishnava and he got all the blessings. He got pure love of Godhead. Okay, we'll go next text number 12. You are known as Gosani, teacher or Acharya, but now talk about your attributes and reputation will spread throughout the city of Purushottam. How your position will be impaired. Although Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu knew that Dhammadar Pandit was a pure and simple devotee, upon hearing this impudent talk, the Lord said, "My dear Damodar, what nonsense are you speaking?" So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu hears this criticism, he then chastises Damodar Pandit. "What is this nonsense you're speaking? How dare you speak such words?" Damodar Pandit replied, "You are the independent Supreme Personality of Godhead beyond all criticism. My dear Lord, you can act as you please. No one can say anything to restrict you. Nevertheless, the entire world is impudent. People can say anything. How can you stop them? Dear Lord, you are a learned teacher. Why then don't you consider that this boy is the son of a widowed Brahmana? Why are you so affectionate to him? Although the boy's mother is completely austere and chaste, she has one natural fault. She is a very beautiful young girl. And you, my dear Lord, are a handsome, attractive young man. Therefore, certainly people will whisper about you. Why should you give them such an opportunity?" So now, Damodar Pandit is explaining himself to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That, you're a young, attractive sannyasi. On the other hand, there's this young lady who is a widow with a young son. If you mix with the young son, then people will start spreading rumors that there's something going on between you and this young lady. In the purport, Prabhupada says, as a simple and staunch devotee of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Damodar Pandit could not tolerate criticism of the Lord. But unfortunately, he himself was criticizing Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his own way. The Lord could understand that it was because of Damodar Pandit's simplicity that he impudently dared criticize him. Nevertheless, such behavior by a devotee is not very good. Text 18. Having said this, Damodar Pandit became silent. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu smiled, pleased within himself, and considered the impudence of Damodar Pandit. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught, "This impudence is also a sign of pure love for me. I have no other intimate friend like Damodar Pandit." So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could understand that it is only out of his pure love he is criticizing. He is just concerned about my welfare. He doesn't want any bad name to come to me. That's why he is saying these heavy words. Text 20. Thinking in this way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to perform his noon duties. The next day, he called Damodar Pandit to a solitary place. The Lord said, "My dear friend Damodar, you had better go to Nadia and stay with my mother. I see no one but you to protect her, for you are so careful that you can caution even me. You are the most neutral among my associates." So remember, through Damodar Pandit, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught the principle of neutrality. So now Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he himself, is acknowledging this. You are the most neutral among my associates. This is very good, for without being neutral, one cannot protect religious principles. You can do whatever I cannot. Indeed, you can even chastise me, what to speak of others. It is best for you to go to the shelter of my mother's lotus feet, for no one will be able to behave independently in front of you. So this pastime is taking in Jagannath Puri. So Damodar Pandit, he used to stay in Jagannath Puri and closely associate with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But after this incident, Mahaprabhu, now he's instructing Damodar Pandit that you please leave Jagannath Puri and you go to Bengal, to the house of my mother, Mother Sachi. And you please stay with my mother and serve her. Why? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is explaining that you are the most neutral among my associates. You don't even hesitate to criticize me when I'm deviating, what to speak of others. So therefore, you can properly protect my mother. If you stay with my mother, then no one will dare come and do any nonsense. In the presence of my mother will be protected. So you please do this service for me. You please leave Jagannath Puri. And you please go to Bengal, stay with my mother, and you take care of my mother. So that's what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is instructing Damodar Pandit now. It is best for you to go to the shelter of my mother's lotus feet, for no one will be able to behave independently in front of you. At intervals, you may come here and then soon again go there. Offer my mother millions of my obeisances. Please speak to her about my happiness here and thus give her happiness. Tell her that I sent you to inform her of my personal activities so that she may share in my happiness. Speaking in this way, satisfy the mind of my mother Sachi. Also remind her of one of the most confidential incident with this message for me. So now we're seeing Mahaprabhu's devotee care. So Mahaprabhu's, different temples, they have their own devotee care department. So Mahaprabhu, he himself is leading from the front. So he's telling Dhammadar Pandit that, my mother, she'll be feeling separation from me. So to mitigate that separation, what you do, you go to her with a message from me. You go narrate all these pastimes which I'm doing in Jagannath Puri. You narrate all these pastimes to my mother. So by hearing my pastimes Jagannath Puri, she will feel connected with me and her unhappiness will go away. And also Mahaprabhu is saying, please offer millions of obeisances on my behalf to my mother, Sachi. So Mahaprabhu is feeling so much gratitude and love to his mother, who is obviously none other than Mother Yasoda in Krishna Leela. And now Mahaprabhu is saying that you please narrate one confidential incident to my mother. Speaking in this way, satisfy the mind of my mother Sachi. Also remind her of one most confidential incident with this message from me. I come to your home again and again to eat all the sweetmeats and vegetables you offer. You know that I come and eat the offerings, but because of external separation, you consider this a dream. During the last Magha Sakranti festival, you cooked varieties of vegetables, condensed milk, cakes, and sweet rice for me. You offered the food to Lord Krishna, and while you were in meditation, I suddenly appeared, and your eyes filled with tears. I went there in great haste and ate everything. When you saw me eating, you felt great happiness. In a moment after you had wiped your eyes, you saw that the plate you had offered me was empty. Then you thought, I dreamt as if Nimai were eating everything. In the condition of external separation, you were again under illusion, thinking that you had not offered the food to Lord Vishnu. Then you went to see the cooking pots and found that every pot was filled with food. Therefore you again offer the food after cleansing the place for the offering. Thus I again and again eat everything you offer me, for I am attracted by your pure love. So Mahaprabhu is saying to Dhammadar Pandit that when you go to my house, or when you go to my mother's place in Bengal, you please narrate this message on my behalf. So this message, Mahaprabhu is telling to Mother Sachi that last Magha Sakranti festival, on that day you cooked many nice sabjis for me, you cooked various types of cakes, sweet rice, condensed milk products for me, and you offered to your deities in your house. And while you were offering, in your meditation, you saw or you dreamt that I had come and I had personally eaten all the offerings. Then when you got out of your meditation, you saw that all the plates were empty. There was no more bhoga. After you offered the bhoga, you saw all the bhoga was disappeared. There's nothing left. And you were confused. What has happened? You went back to the kitchen and you looked into the pots and you saw all the pots were filled with prasad, or filled with bhoga. So then you thought, I must have forgotten to offer bhoga. Then you again went and you offered the bhoga. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu reveals that actually, you thought you were dreaming, but actually that happened in real life. Actually, I myself came and I myself ate all the offerings that you had cooked. And if you remember last week, we were discussing how 4 places Chaitanya Mahaprabhu always appears. 2 in relation to prasadam, 2 in relation to singing and dancing. So whenever Sachi Mata would cook, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would personally appear there and personally eat all the offerings. Whenever Raghava Pandit used to cook, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to personally come and eat all the offerings. Whenever Srivas Thakur would have kirtan in his house, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to personally appear in Srivas Thakur's house and participate in the kirtan. And in whichever place Nityananda Prabhu danced, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would appear. So now Mahaprabhu is personally revealing all this. How every day, whenever Sachi Mata used to cook bhoga, she used to, in her mind, remember her son Nimai. And she used to dream that her own son has come and is eating all the offerings. And she would feel very happy. And then when she would open her eyes, she would see all the plates are empty. But she would think that it didn't happen in real life. She thought she was dreaming. But actually it happened in real life. But out of her ecstasy, out of her feelings of separation, she was thinking that it's all just a dream. So Mahaprabhu is relating all this to his mother, just to give her assurance that don't worry, I am personally present with you. Every day I'm coming to your house, every day I'm personally eating all your offerings. I haven't forgotten you. I am personally there with you. Every day I'm coming and giving you my association. So in this way Mahaprabhu is pacifying his mother. And the same thing we'll see in Krishna Lila, how Krishna, he's always giving or reciprocating with his devotees, giving them assurances, how he is observing all of our devotional service, how he's keeping track of every service we're doing, and how personal Krishna is with our dealings, in his dealings with his devotees. For example, in Krishna Lila, when Krishna, he appears in the jail of Kamsa, Prabhupada explains that Krishna, he first comes, shows his four-handed form. Why does he show his four-handed form? It's given that Devaki and Vasudeva, they're worried that Kamsa has killed all of our previous children, so now Kamsa will also come and kill Krishna. So to mitigate that fear, Krishna, he manifests four-handed form to show that don't worry, I'm no ordinary child, I'm Vishnu himself. I have Shankha, Chakra, Gada. So I am Vishnu himself, what harm can Kamsa do to me? So there's no need to fear, I'm Vishnu himself, no need to fear. So in this way, Krishna is pacifying Mother Devaki. Same thing we'll see later on when Krishna has killed Kamsa. Kamsa was sitting high up in his throne, and then Krishna jumps up, grabs Kamsa, throws him down to the bottom of the stadium. Then Krishna beats or punches Kamsa to death. Then after Kamsa has passed away, what does Krishna do? He grabs Kamsa, the dead body of Kamsa, by his hair, and he starts dragging the dead body of Kamsa around the stadium, around the wrestling arena, around the whole, in front of the whole audience. So you can imagine like a big soccer stadium filled with thousands of people. And Krishna's there right in the middle of the soccer stadium. He's killed Kamsa, Kamsa's dead. After killing Kamsa, he grabs the dead body of Kamsa by the hair and he starts dragging the dead body throughout the whole stadium, all around in a circle. Why does he do this? Prabhupada explains the reason Krishna does this is because Devaki and Vasudeva, they were so much overcome by fear that Kamsa is such a great demon and Krishna is just a tender young boy, 10-year-old boy. How can Krishna defeat Kamsa? So because their consciousness is so much overcome by fear, Krishna, he wants to just drive out all of that fear and anxiety from the hearts of his mother and father. So just to assure them that don't worry, it's all over. It's finished, there's nothing for you to be afraid. The bad dream is over. Just to give that assurance to his parents, he starts dragging the dead body around the stadium. Just to tell them that, he's actually dead, no need to fear. He's dead, it's fine. You can relax now. So in this way we see Krishna, how personal he is with his devotees. He understands what's going on in their minds and he'll always give assurances. He'll always reciprocate in a very loving way in response to his devotees' feelings. Another example is Krishna, when he was marrying the one princess, I think Nagnajiti, the daughter of King Nagnajit. There's the 7 bulls Krishna has to subdue to win the hand of the princess. And Krishna, he expands himself into 7 forms, 7 Krishnas to subdue the 7 bulls. He doesn't have to do that. Just in one single form, he could have subdued all the bulls. Just with his 2 hands, he could have just gathered all the bulls, subdued them by himself. But he expands himself in this Leela into 7 forms. Why does he do this? Prabhupada writes in Krishna book. The reason Krishna expands in 7 forms is to again assure the Princess Nagnajiti, that don't worry, although I am one and I have so many queens, I can expand myself and I can simultaneously be with each and every one of my queens. So it's not that you have to wait for your turn. Only after 16,000 days it will be your turn to have my personal association. Then again you have to wait for another 16,000 days before you get my association. No, Krishna is, by expanding into 7 forms to subdue the bulls, he is showing Nagnajiti that I am the Supreme Lord, I can expand myself, I can simultaneously be present with all of my queens. So don't worry, you'll have my full association. So again, you see how personal Krishna is, how he is always acting in a way to give his devotees assurance that I will perfectly reciprocate with you, I am noticing all your service. So same thing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is doing with Sachimata here. To encourage Sachimata to bring her happiness, he's telling Dhammadar Pandit, you please go to her house and you narrate these messages. Tell her that I personally come to her house every day and I personally eat all her offerings. So then she'll be encouraged, she'll be more happy, she'll be more blissful, and those pangs of separations will be mitigated. She'll feel more close to Mahaprabhu. So in this we see how personal the Supreme Lord is with his devotees. Okay, we'll finish with just a few more verses. Text 39. Only by your order I am living in Nilachal, Jagannath Puri. Nevertheless, you still pull me near you because of your great love for me. So previously when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had taken sannyas, as the pastime goes, Nityananda Prabhu had tricked Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to go to Advaita Acharya's house. Nityananda Prabhu pointed to the Ganga and said, you've arrived in Vrindavan, this is Yamuna, you can go. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, thinking Ganga is Yamuna, he goes, dives in. Then Advaita Acharya picks up Mahaprabhu, takes him to his house. And in Advaita Acharya's house, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu meets Sachimata. Sachimata cooks for the Supreme Lord for many days. Then as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is leaving for good, Sachimata, she puts forward one request to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That yes, I know you've taken sannyas, I know that you have to leave Navadvip for good and never come back. But I have one request, you please make Jagannath Puri your headquarters. Why? Because Jagannath Puri is very close to Bengal. Orissa and Bengal are right next to each other. They're two states right next to each other. So if you stay in Jagannath Puri, because devotees from Bengal are constantly going to Puri, and devotees from Puri are constantly coming to Bengal, so as these devotees are going in between these two cities, I will get to hear news about your pastimes. And by hearing news about your pastimes, I'll be able to keep my life, I'll be pacified. The pangs of separation won't be so much. So this was one request Achimata offered, that you please make Puri your headquarters. And Mahaprabhu said, okay, I'll make Puri my headquarters. So that's the reason why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was based in Jagannath Puri. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told Dhammadar Pandit, remind Mother Sachi in this way again and again, and worship her lotus feet in my name. After saying this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ordered that varieties of prasadam offered to Lord Jagannath be brought. The Lord then gave him the prasadam, separately packed, to offer to various Vaishnavas and his mother. In this way, Dhammadar Pandit went to Nadia or Navadip. After meeting Mother Sachi, he stayed under her care of her lotus feet. So after giving these instructions, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he also sends many bags of prasadam for his mother Sachi and for all the devotees who are living in Bengal, like Advaita Acharya, Srivas Thakur, all of these great devotees of his. In Bengal, he sends different packets of Jagannath Mahaprasad to be sent for them. Okay, well, this will stop here. Yes, sir. I'm not sure, Prabhu. Yeah, can't remember who exactly Ishwar Puri was in his previous life. Does anyone else remember? Okay. It might be like, okay, because Ishwar Puri is acting as the spiritual master of Krishna. Yeah, I'm not too sure. It's mentioned somewhere in CC, but at the moment I can't remember off the top of my head who Ishwar Puri was in his past life. Yes, obviously, from his side, Madhavendra Puri would have done his duty as a guru to give all the teachings, to teach all the shastras, all the principles. But it's given Ramachandra Puri, he used to hang out with impersonalists, Mayavadis, and by the influence or that bad association with Mayavadis, he deviated. And then he dared to criticize his own Guru Maharaj. And then Madhavendra Puri, he then chastises Ramachandra Puri by saying that, you rascal, just get out of here. I don't want to see your face. If I die seeing your face, who knows where my destination will be. So you please get out of here. So that chastisement that thunderbolt which he released at Ramachandra Puri, Prabhupada explains, that was his mercy towards Ramachandra Puri. So Prabhupada explains that the spiritual master, he can be as hard as a thunderbolt and he can be as soft as a rose. Both is the mercy of the spiritual master. Sometimes the spiritual master will instruct in a very loving, gentle way, like a rose. Sometimes will be very heavy like a thunderbolt. But that also is instruction. So in this case, Madhavendra Puri, him chastising Ramachandra Puri in this way, in such heavy ways, was actually his blessings upon him. That was his way of showing mercy to him. That what you're doing, what you're saying is completely improper, this is not good, you should immediately change yourself. But it was too late. Ramachandra Puri, he was already, damage was done, his consciousness was already affected by Mayavad philosophy. He had already become an impersonalist. He was just thinking Brahman is the goal of life. This Hare Krishna chanting, singing and dancing, it's all just sentimentalism. He'd already done the Vaishnava part to his spiritual master and it was too late. And he couldn't get the hint. Even after being chastised by his spiritual master, he didn't feel bad or remorse or anything. He was just, he continued on with his ways and he just became worse and worse, unfortunately.
In those days, transport, they used to go by boat. That means it used to take a long time. So, in that period of time,
Oh, then must have been dry prasad, like khaja, things like that, laddus. So probably wasn't paneer sabji, which goes off in one day. So it must have been some dry items that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had sent to Bengal. And this was happening from both ways. When devotees from Bengal, they used to come to Puri, they would cook many different prasad and they would bring to Jagannath Puri to offer to Mahaprabhu and all of his associates. And the same way Mahaprabhu is also reciprocating. Whenever any devotees from Puri would go to Bengal, Mahaprabhu himself would send Jagannath's Mahaprasad to Bengal. Like one famous devotee is, again, Raghava Pandit. Whenever Raghava Pandit used to come to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri, he would used to carry bags and bags and bags full of different varieties of prasad for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And these bags of Raghava Pandit were famously known as Raghavera Jali, or the bags of Raghava Pandit. And it was famous all around that area. And so much prasad would come from Raghava Pandit and the other devotees that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's whole room would just be filled with prasad, given to him by all of his devotees coming from Bengal. So many devotees would come, and Raghava Pandit he himself would bring so many different varieties of prasad, personally cooked by him and his sister, I think, Damayanti. And these bags of prasad, they would fill the whole room of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, somehow or other, he's the Supreme Lord, so he would honor all of that prasad to please his devotees. So, yes, there's a lot of sweet prasad pastimes in CC. Okay, we'll stop here. Shri Caitanya Caritamrta ki jai, Jai Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai, entire Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.